What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode. Hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share the video. Hit the join button and become a member. Why? Well, members get exclusive content. Hit the bell icon on my channel so that you will receive a notification every time that I drop a video, and you can go and check the video out. Leave a like, leave a comment on this video. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Let's get right into it. And this story takes us to Tracy Prison, circa 1984. A dude arrived in prison from out of town, and let's call him Joe. And Joe incurred some serious problems there in Tracy, California. Tracy was a staunch and formidable prison at this time. There was only a few prisons around in the early 80s, 70s, etc. Tracy was one of them, and it was really a stomping ground and a who's who of gang banging there on the yard in Tracy. Hell, I brought you a story about someone being brutalized for his crimes on the street that transferred there to prison, and he was in Tracy. Though Joe was from out of town, he hung out in California. He had a small crew in California that transferred illicit substances from out of town to California. He hung out in a Blood neighborhood on the east side. This Blood is a very organized, violent, and formidable gang. They have some heavy hitters and some reputable members. Joe was not a part of this street gang. Again, he was from out of town. But they let him hang around there because they were making money with Joe there. Eventually, Joe got caught up in the game and found himself in prison. Joe was about 27 years old. Back in those days, you were not getting a life sentence or 40 and 50 years for a little illegal substance. You were still going to prison if you were black, and you were still getting time, but you were not getting 40 and 50 years. So Joe had about 4 or 5 years. Joe had a cellie, let's call him Diabolical. Diabolical had been in and out of prison all of his life. Diabolical was in his 50s. He was an OG from said East Side Blood neighborhood. He knew Joe from the street. This is how they became cellies. They recognized one another in prison, and Diabolical said he would take Joe under his wing and lace him about how to comport himself here in prison. This is not out of town. There are gang politics and other rules and protocols that you must not flout and you must abide by, or else. And since he had some sort of love for Joe, a young, strong dude, a young rider who was making a lot of money in his neighborhood, bringing money to his neighborhood. And by all accounts, Joe was not a coward. So he decided he would sell up with him and lace him up and essentially keep him safe, keep him away from the wolves there on the yard. And that's what he did. They sailed up and they were tight, they were cool. Neither one of them wanted for anything, as Joe still had money and had women bringing him stuff in from the outside. Joe was a player of sorts, a young dude, again, apparently very intelligent and very determined. There on the yard, Joe was not getting into any conflicts whatsoever under the guidance of Diabolical. Then, all of a sudden, a few months after Joe was on the yard, some charges of him, or some accusations, were revealed. Someone else came into the prison that knew Joe from the outside and said that Joe, who again was about 27 years old, that when he was on the street, he was dating a 16-year-old. Now, this is disallowed in prison. if you are not a teenager, you cannot date a teenager. I don't care how old you are. This is going to be frowned upon and really dealt with swiftly, particularly back in those days. But even now, you cannot go to prison with unsavory charges or accusations that you harmed a minor. Now, some may say that 16 years old and 27 is not that far apart and it was consensual and etc. I'm just telling you what the rules are. If you go in there for having dealt with a 16-year-old and you are above that age, 20 and older, you're not, or even 18, 19, you can be in serious trouble. Joe was confronted with this information. Really, the blacks got together and they said that they would just confront Joe and ask him, because they had no proof. He was not in there for that. They had no paperwork on this, that he had harmed a child, if you will. He was in there for something totally different. So this was just something that came to light by someone who wandered into the prison. And without evidence, no moves can be made. All they could do was ask Joe, but pretend as if they had evidence. He's unfamiliar with the politics here in California, in the California prison system. He knows nothing about it. He doesn't know the games and trickery that is about to be played on his life and his manhood. So Diabolical was charged with the task of finding out from Joe if he had indeed dated a 16-year-old on the street and had relations with her. Late night there in the cell, they began to exchange war stories, but the whole time, Diabolical, he had a plan, which was to elicit the information from Joe as to his guilt or non-guilt in these accusations. He asked Joe one night, flat out, were you having relations with a 16-year-old? Was your girl 16 years old on the street? Now, I know you from the street, Joe. I don't recall you having a 16-year-old girlfriend. I've seen you with multiple women, but none of them looked like they were 16 years old. Is this true? Joe, again, not really understanding that. Perhaps wherever he's from, the rules are the same as they are here in California, which is that these sort of charges are these sort of accusations, because again, he wasn't charged with that. He wasn't in prison for that, but just these sort of accusations could end your very life. And perhaps not wherever he's from. Perhaps it's not as frowned upon. So he doesn't understand the gravity of his answer. That if he says yes, he was dealing with a minor, that this could end him. I don't believe he understands that. He's thinking that what he did was not wrong because it was consensual and this was his girlfriend. She's 16. He tells Diabolical, he answers the question and he admits to it. He said, yeah, but that's my girl. You know, like I know her family, they approve of it. I'm gonna marry her one day. It's like, that's my girl. I'm not gonna have any children with her until she's of age, but I'm gonna help her through school and all this. It's like, that's my girl. Like, I haven't been touching on her like that because she's still, you know, sort of young and inexperienced, but that's my girl, bro. You know, this is not a situation where I went out of my home late night and violated a woman or any sort of woman of any age in this way on the street somewhere. This is my girl who comes to my home. I go to her home with her family, etc. Everyone knows about this relationship. This is totally different than what you are implying. And Diabolical, he patiently explained to him that, Joe, This is inexcusable. This is a transgression against the rules and the protocols that we have here in prison, regardless of whether or not this is your girl and her father, grandfather, mother, grandmother. If God himself approves of the relationship, we here in prison do not. Chances are there are going to be consequences. And Joe, feeling like he had done nothing wrong, and he's not a coward. He's not running anywhere. Diabolical took the information back to the population and explained that indeed Joe had been dealing with someone he should not have been dealing with. He explained that everything that Joe had told him, that it was consensual, that their family, both families on either side approved of the relationship, etc. But the consensus was the same. It was one consensus. It doesn't matter who approves of this relationship outside of these walls. They don't abide by the rules and protocols that we do inside of prison. It is unacceptable behavior here in prison. And so something must be done. Immediately, Diabolical was hesitant because he did have love for Joe. So he did feel like Joe was out of line and out of pocket for dealing with this younger girl. The plan had been hatched and put into place. Machinations indeed proceeded. And it didn't take long. One night, in the still of the night, in the quiet of the building, Diabolical jumped off his bunk and he hit Joe with a weapon. He hit him right in the shoulder, right on his side. Bam, bam, he stabbed him. At least 2 times. Joe came to, because he was essentially asleep. He said, man, what's going on, man? Whoa. And tried to jump up. The Diabolical was on him. Much bigger, older, and stronger, more experienced. Got him on the ground in the cell. Essentially, he knocked Joe out because he was filled with fury. And though he had love for Joe, he felt like that love did not supersede the rules and the protocols. He loved the rules and the protocols more than he loved Joe. And felt like Joe had transgressed and flouted the rules and the protocols. And this infuriated him. And he attacked like a wild animal. And he knocked Joe out after stabbing him multiple times. But as Joe was lying there on the ground in the cell, unconscious, Diabolical came up with a more diabolical plan. As he put Joe's pants down and inserted something inside of him. I'm not even sure what the instrument was. But people said that they heard Joe screaming on the tier, essentially begging Diabolical to stop. No one interfered. No one said anything. Everyone knew what had happened and why Joe was down there being violated. Now, oftentimes, you will find that someone that is in there for dealing with a minor, a woman, or abusing of any woman of any age, that oftentimes they are assaulted in this way. Their pants pulled down and somehow assaulted. And then people, the public may say, well, they are just as sick. That's homosexual activity, that's homosexual behavior, however you slice it up, on both sides. I understand this sentiment. But as I've said before, right or wrong, they in prison will tell you that the reason that they will pull someone's pants down and pour something upon them, slap them with a wet shower shoe upon their ass cheeks, or even insert something in them, is to humiliate the person. It has nothing to do with sexual gratification whatsoever. It is not gratifying to them whatsoever. It's only about humiliating the person and making them feel what the woman on the street felt when she was being violated. This is the thought process. You can agree or disagree. You can think, nah, these dudes have some sort of, they're getting something out of it. I'm just telling you what the thought process is. You make your own decision from there. I'm just telling you what I know to be true, what I've heard from multiple sources, from multiple people over the years. Man, why do y'all do that though? But bro, it's humiliation. That's it. It's to humiliate and dehumanize and emasculate this man for abusing this woman. We're not getting off on this. It's no gratification for us. Me, myself, I want no parts of it. Just unalive the person or whatever and move on. I want no parts of pulling your pants down and violating you in that way with a broomstick, nothing. I don't want to see that. I don't want no parts of it. I don't want nothing to do with your gluteus maximus. I don't want nothing to do with it. I don't want no parts of it. I can't speak for everyone else. This does go down in prison in this way, again, for humiliation purposes. And Joe was deeply humiliated there in the cell, beat down, stabbed up, and now violated as a man. Basically, came and got Joe the next day and took him out of there. But Joe, he wanted revenge. He could not accept what had happened to him, that he had been violated in this way, his manhood, because again, Joe was a strong dude who was making a lot of money in this neighborhood. He had a whole little crew from out of town over here making money. He was making his neighborhood some money, some of these OGs some money. They had weaponry. They had it all. They were not cowards out there. They had a whole little crew making money in a whole nother state, in a whole organized gang-banging neighborhood, and they was accepted, allowed. That doesn't often happen. So Joe was somebody. And he knew Diabolical from the street. He also knew some of Diabolical's family. And Joe was sitting there essentially in protective custody, having been stabbed up and assaulted. So they're going to get you off the yard, whether you want to get off the yard or not. They're going to put you in protective custody, whether you want to go or not, after being stabbed up and abused. Clearly, he was over there in protective custody, outraged, infuriated, and ruminating. Cultivating very serious, sinister machinations. Again, Joe did not have a lot of time in prison, so he waited and bided his time. He was patient, but angry nonetheless, and determined to exact revenge on someone in Diabolical's family. Some of you may have heard about this story. I'm sure you have. And Joe got out of prison a year or so, 2 years after this incident. Everyone on the streets also knows what has happened to Joe there in prison. Diabolical family knows what Diabolical did to Joe in prison. The word is out. I've told you before, prison sometimes like a soap. There's a lot of gossiping going on in there. The word spreads fast. You can't even necessarily call it gossiping, even though sometimes it is that. But sometimes it's just information being spread, and that's self-preservation. It's important for us to know what happened with this person and that person on this yard or on the street. So if this person comes on our yard, we need this information. And so the information is disseminated. That's not necessarily gossiping. That's transferring and disseminating important, vital information that could save your life. You need to know who you are around. Everyone knows what has transpired with Joe there in Tracy Prison, that he has been brutalized and violated. Joe got out, and he sought revenge upon the person he felt like had ruined his life. Diabolical was not coming home anytime soon. He had now caught case for the assault on Joe, and he already had time and had been in and out of prison all of his life. He was not coming home now anytime soon. Well, apparently Joe felt like the only way to exact revenge, that he would be able to get revenge on Diabolical, was to assault someone from his family. Joe plotted and planned for all of 2 months or so upon his release. And then he caught Diabolical's brother slipping. Essentially, he kidnapped Diabolical's brother, took him into some basement, pistol whipped him, beat him badly, pulled his pants down, and penetrated him with the pistol. Didn't pull the trigger, but he violated Diabolical's brother. He felt like in the same way that he had been violated. And it was sadistic and it was sick. He essentially tortured Diabolical's brother. He pistol whipped him, beat him, punched him, kicked him, tied him up, ripped his pants down. This is a grown man on the street that's not in prison. Doesn't want this done to him. Has done nothing to deserve this himself. He's paying for what his brother did, or what Joe feels like his brother did as far as violating him. Now, the anger is geared towards him, and it's being taken out on him. And he's in the basement being brutalized. And eventually, he was let go within an inch of his life. Really, they all knew what had happened, who had done it, that Joe had did this. And they were after Joe. They put a hit out on Joe. Joe was going to be no more. But Joe escaped town with his crew unscathed. He went back to where he came from, never to be heard from again. Crazy. I remember this shit. I know exactly what happened here. It was crazy. It was a crazy situation. But Joe had went in there. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. Were they right for violating Joe in this way? For dealing with a 16-year-old in a consensual capacity? Or were they wrong? Was Joe wrong for taking it out on Diabolical's brother when he got out of prison? Someone who had nothing to do with what his brother did in prison? I don't know. It's tough. Y'all let me know in the comments what y'all think, man. A crazy situation. But these things do happen in prison. People are brutalized in this way, assaulted in this way. It is not as prevalent now as it once was. Not even close. But again, when it does happen, when it was happening then, they will tell you that it is for humiliation purposes only. Now, of course, that's not true in every situation. Some of these dudes are getting off on it. Some of it is gratification. But some of them are just doing this to people who don't have bad charges. So then it's not humiliation. That's gratification. But when you come in there with certain charges against you, abuse against a woman, you will be brutalized. in this way. And they're going to say it's not because of gratification. It's to humiliate you in the same capacity, in the same manner that you humiliated your victim. That's it. You can agree with that or disagree. I'm just telling you what the thought process is there in prison. That's what they're going to tell you if you ask them, why do that? Why you do that? Why you pull his pants down, do all that? Man, what's up, man? You gay? Nothing wrong with being gay, but is that what you are? Just say it. And they're going to tell you, hell no, I ain't gay. Bro, well, this is to humiliate him. I ain't getting nothing out of it. They said to turn my head while I was doing it. This was to humiliate him for what he did. Period. We want him to live with this forever, like his female victim has to live with her abuse forever. That's it. Again, I'm not justifying it. I'm just explaining the process. Agree or disagree, that's what it is. I'll be back. And in the meantime, stay free, people.